Chair, how are you?
I'm doing great. Just waiting for you though.
Oh, sorry.
No. All right. I'd like to call the meeting to order, welcome to the October 2nd, 2025 Land Use and Natural Resources Committee meeting. We could all please stand for the pledge. Salute, pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you. Can the clerk please call roll?
Yes, good afternoon. Directors Bradford,
Here.
Houlihan, Clark Kretz here, Mickle, absent, Teeter, Villegas,
Here.
Vice Chair Hume,
Here.
Vice Chair Kozlowski, absent, and Chair Baines.
Present. Thank you. Moving on to the public communications. This is time for anyone who wishes to address this board on an item that does not appear elsewhere on this agenda. Is there any members of the public that wishes to comment at this time? Anybody online?
There is no public comment.
Perfect. And now for a little bit of housekeeping before the next main agenda, we got disclosures. This will be the time where any director can disclose any conflicts of interest on any items that are on the agenda. Anyone have any conflicts? Seeing none, we'll now move on to the consent calendar.
Bradford will move to approve.
All right. There's a motion and a second. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. The next item is item number 2, release a request for proposal for the Cycle 7 Regional Housing Needs Allocation and Regional Housing Element Technical Assistance. Is Chelsea Lee, staff will please present.
Hi, good afternoon, Chair and committee members. Chelsea Lee here with SACOG's Planning and Programming Team. The action item before you today concerns the release of a request for proposals for SACOG to procure consultant support services in preparation for the Cycle 7 housing element and regional housing needs allocation. Pending board approval, the executive director will be authorized to execute a contract with the selected consultant for an amount not to exceed $250,000. This RFP will provide additional capacity to SACOG staff in developing the tools and resources our jurisdictions will need to be successful during Cycle 7. So if you all recall, we previewed this item with you at September's meeting, and it was during that meeting the committee had requested more information on the RFP scope of work. So in your packet materials, you will find attachment A, which describes the milestones and deliverables of the project. So before we get into the nuts and bolts of the scope of work, I just wanted to provide a brief refresher on RHNA. So what is the RHNA? The RHNA is the state mandated process that occurs every 8 years, whereby cities and counties in California are required to plan for sufficient housing to accommodate all economic segments of the community. This process has been in place since 1969. And we're going into the 7th iteration, Cycle 7 of the RHNA and the Housing Element Update. So this process begins with the state, or HCD, providing us as SACOG with a regional determination of housing need. And this represents the total number of units across 6 income categories that the region must collectively plan for. SACOG's charge is to develop a methodology to allocate the regional determination across 28 member jurisdictions in our region. So this methodology must advance a series of state objectives and be reviewed and approved by HCD. Then jurisdictions adopt their housing elements, demonstrating how they can accommodate their assigned RHNA through zoning, policies and programs in the housing element, and other planning mechanisms. So I just want to be clear that RHNA is really about setting the table for housing development to occur, So it is a state mandate, but it is not a requirement on how many units the region or a particular jurisdiction is expected to build. HCD reviews and certifies the housing element if compliant with state law, and having a compliant housing element is necessary to remain eligible for state funding. Okay, so now we're diving into the scope of work. So this slide provides a visual of the different elements constituting the scope of work. It is divided into 2 sections and has 9 elements. Tasks and deliverables are associated with the development of the RHNA methodology and producing 2 regional housing element technical assistance products for our members. So most of the selected consultants' time will be focused on supporting us with developing the RHNA methodology. This work will begin in earnest next summer when we kick off the process. The methodology is subject to specific statutory milestones, and many timelines are prescribed in state statute. So the consultant will support us in data collection, technical analysis and modeling, review of the RHNA plans, and assist us in outreaching to housing stakeholders. In tandem with these efforts, we will also be working with the consultant on developing those two more time-intensive TA products that you see here, the regional AFFH analysis and the ADU affordability analysis. Outside of this RFP, SACOG staff are also leading efforts independent of this to create additional products and services, those templates, the data packages, the pre-drafted narratives that we've spoken to. All of that will be produced in-house, separate from this RFP. So I want to take a moment to emphasize the regional housing TA products because I think these are really important to the scope of work. These are products that were in high demand during the 6th cycle, and they are in high demand this cycle. We've been having conversations with your planning staff, and these 2 items in particular have been identified as services that are going to be the bigger cost savers for jurisdictions. They think they're going to be extremely helpful for SACOG as the regional entity to produce going into cycle 7. It's worth noting that both of these products are required components of the housing element. So jurisdictions are required to conduct a fair housing analysis. The ADU survey and analysis is really important for jurisdictions to have because it provides a baseline affordability assumption that informs how a jurisdiction distributes ADUs across the different income categories in order to receive credit towards them for the RHNA. So while it's difficult to provide estimates on cost savings for these 2 products, we do think they will significantly reduce overall project costs associated with the housing element. Anecdotally, we have heard that the average housing element consultant costs in cycle 6 ranged from about $125,000 to $150,000. We have also heard that consultants underquoted. So now we're hearing, for example, quotes for a smaller jurisdiction at the price point of $250,000 for cycle 7. So it's also worth noting that this is a very specialized field. There's only so many consultants that can do this type of work. And so supply and demand are going to be hot topics in cycle 7. Ultimately, what I think this means for our region is that having SACOG do this work at the regional level means that our 28 jurisdictions aren't paying for it separately in their own procurement processes, right, and contracts with the consultants. Again, we are producing many more TA services outside of this scope and really want to move us towards the goal of removing any and all of those necessary scope elements of the housing plan where a regional approach is applicable. So we really want to take that financial pressure off the local budgets and save your planning staff some time and additional resources. So with that, staff's recommendation for the Lunar Committee is to recommend that the Board of Directors approve the release of the RFP and authorize the Executive Director to negotiate and execute the contract not to exceed $250,000. Thank you, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you so much for the presentation. Clerk, is there anyone online that has a question? Is there anybody in the public that has any question or comment on this item?
There's no public comment.
So I'll bring it back to the director. Is there any questions or concerns? Director Jean?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the report. Just a quick question. Certainly, I understand the economy of scale and the consultant availability crisis, of pulling it up to the regional level in order to help bear some of that cost for the local jurisdictions. How will the consultant manage, say, conflicting local control issues relative to is this fairly benign information that's being compiled, or are there things that have land use implications that people might react negatively toward?
Yeah, thanks for the question, Director. I think it's a pretty straightforward process. Most of the consultant's time will be spent on the RENA methodology. And the RENA methodology, has those different steps and processes that we go through. We're leading those efforts, so we're going to be helping to facilitate and manage those conversations with the consultant. On the housing element technical assistance side, those are really, the role of the consultant is to really assist us in providing that support. So I wouldn't characterize that as, controversial or having sort of, a political leaning one way or another.
I think, if I can, sorry, add, I think you're right. It's pretty benign information. This is probably primarily data, not policy recommendations. And the consultant will be helping us pull together kind of a technical advisory group of local planning staff to kind of oversee each step in the methodology development. And then the methodology will be coming to the land use committee, and you'll oversee and be ultimately approving that. So I think what the consultant's going to do is primarily on the kind of data collection and assembly side. But then as far as policy setting for the methodology, that'll happen here. For your housing element, that's completely at the local jurisdiction level.
And will there be check-in points as the methodology is crafted, or will it only
Absolutely.
be buy-in okay.
Absolutely, yeah. You'll have kind of a stepped process that gets you to a final methodology.
Great, thank you, Chair.
All right. Any other questions?
Sort of piggybacking on that last discussion, I think it would be super helpful for us to have maybe a timeline as a committee, just so that we can see what's going to happen next. And, maybe diving deeper into, a little bit more of your presentation too, and just and educating us as well. I wasn't obviously involved with the last one, but looking forward to being involved with this one. So.
Yeah, absolutely, Director. We have a timeline that we can share with you. We did share it in the last presentation, but it has all of those important sort of milestones that we've been speaking to about, teeing up the different, approval steps when we get to the methodology. So we can definitely
Okay.
get a copy.
Yeah, I know I was talking earlier with you and several other people, and it might be helpful to kind of go back. I think you suggested going back to the last time maybe, and kind of going through like a little mock trial of it all. Might be nice. Thanks.
Any other questions? Comments?
First of all, thank you, Chelsea, for the presentation. Mr. Chair, I'm ready to make a motion, but I think it's a good example of when SACOG can serve as kind of as a facilitator of what otherwise would be a lot of competition for a limited pool of resources to gather this kind of data. So thank you for the effort, and I'm ready to make a motion.
Second.
All right, so I have a motion from Director Villegas, second by Director Bradford. All in favor? Aye.
Hi.
Any opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. Thank you. All right. We're gonna move on to information section of the agenda. The next item, information item number 3, draft 2025 blueprint and environmental impact report status update. Lisa Lynn.
Good afternoon. Lisa Lynn,
afternoon.
Principal Planner on the Planning and Programming team. For 3 years, you've been engaged in the 2025 Blueprint. It's our long-range plan for a real bright future, prosperous economy, and healthy environment. And as this planning process is wrapping up and we're looking ahead to the implementation effort, we mentioned that we would be back to this committee to give you a sense of any revisions to the plans in advance of bringing the plan forward for board consideration next month. Oops, sorry. When the draft blueprint was released this summer, it was a product of the extensive outreach that had been done. And that draft came together through collaboration with your agencies, the public, and all of our partners. We talked about housing trends and needs, transportation options, and the realities about the cost for infrastructure. So these issues and the input that we've collected from the past few years are now all reflected in the policies, the strategies, and the programs in the plan. And we've also included the highlights from each of your jurisdictions. This is something to be really proud of. The jurisdictions are a component of the plan that really stands out because they show how the plan applies to our diverse region, including the suburban and rural areas. So making sure that the plan is responsive to what we've heard, it goes beyond the adoption this fall. And as we've tried to stress in recent presentations that this committee's been hearing and also to your full board, we're taking the momentum from the 2025 Blueprint Plan into the next phase, which is implementation. So to get us there, we've been responding and reviewing all of the comments we received, and we reserved this time on your agenda today in the event that we receive comments that would require a substantial change to the plan or the Environmental Impact Report, EIR. So as mentioned in your staff report, most of the edits are to keep the information current, provide emphasis or clarification. They did not change the analysis or the conclusions. But we did want to provide an update on the public review process. So there were agencies, particularly our state and federal partners, who provided technical updates or asked questions. So these are areas where we're adding by the narrative in the plan. These additions are going to be shown in underlined text where there's additions, or any updates are going to be in that strikeout underline, so they're going to be really easy for everyone to track. For the comments from local agencies and partners, we did receive some comments in support of the programs and policies, and we also received some requests to emphasize the geographic diversity of the region, as well as suggestions to modify some policy language. So we're working on a few key strategic edits to add protection of rural areas, add support for local efforts, and add references to our monitoring program. And this is especially important for those who really wanted to know more about housing. So not all of the comments require a revision. And so in these cases, we're working on responses that point to existing sections of the plan or an appendix where a specific concern is addressed. So all of the comments and the responses are going to be part of the final EIR. We're also sharing the feedback across our teams. It's really important for our programs. It will inform how we work closely with your staff on funding priorities and technical assistance. And we also wanted to make a point that we're carefully reviewing comments that we received on the transportation list. So similar to the approach with the EIR and the plan, we're looking at technical edits, corrections if there was a duplicate project, or if there were clarifications to some of the exempt projects. We're working on those revisions. We want to acknowledge that there were requests to change the project list. And it's important to note that we cannot make those changes at this time due to the air quality conformity lockdown. That's something that you've heard about in previous meetings. So our programming team has been in contact with the staff at all the agencies so that we can take note of any potential updates where there's phasing changes or adjustments or non-exempt projects to consider in the next amendment. So our typical practice is to update the MTIP along with the new blueprint so both plans match. This keeps the list of funded or programmed projects in the MTIP accurate and ensures that the region is meeting our federal requirements. And just one last point is the appendices are also being finalized. We're including information on the additional events for the outreach and engagement this summer. And we also are including some additional information on jurisdictions that we anticipate is going to help with streamlining and implementation. So to wrap up today, we're considering the input, we're responding and revising the plan for consistency to make sure that this plan that you've contributed to is really ready for that next step. So next month, we'll present the final plan to this committee and then request a recommendation for the board. So after all these 3 full productive years, we're going to look ahead to implementation of this plan in partnership with our cities, counties, and all of our partners. So thank you.
Thank you so much for the update and in the presentation. Is there anyone from the public who wish to comment on this item?
There's no public comment.
All right, how about any directors have any questions or comments at this time?
Through the chair, I do have one quick question or comment. Someone mentioned to me, and I haven't been able to find exactly where it is at, but that the job number for Beale Air Force Base in the draft plan might have been significantly lower than the actual number. Trying to see where that would, I don't know where that would be in the plan, but I know the number's around 7,000, so I don't know what the plan reflects, but I just want to make sure that that was noted and updated if appropriate.
Yeah, we're aware. We did talk to the folks at Beale. I think I understand where the difference is. It's in the way that Beale is capturing contract workers that might live off base but come onto base to work like civilian contractors, and versus the way that we're capturing them, where they would still be traveling to Beale for work, but they're not considered like a office at Beale because it might be landscaping or other things where they're working, multiple things. So I think there's a difference in just the way we're accounting for employment, but we can absolutely just touch base and make sure that
That'd be great. Thank you.
All right. There's no other questions, then we'll move on to the final information section on the agenda. The next item, information item number 4, Housing Solutions conversation with our guest, Chuck Moran. Dov Caden from the SACOG staff will present the item.
Yeah, good afternoon, committee. So this is just a brief heads up information item for you all to let you know that we have a special guest coming out to the board meeting in a couple weeks. We have Chuck Marohn, who's the founder of Strong Towns. He has also president of Strong Towns, I guess, has a new book called Escaping the Housing Trap. It's a very good book. I think Escaping the Housing Trap, the Strong Towns Response to the Housing Crisis is the full title. And you might recall, so Chuck came out actually a couple of years ago to have a conversation on the board. So this is an opportunity to kind of continue that conversation. And then there's going to be a lunchtime conversation specifically for this committee and Chuck after the board meeting. So hopefully you all can make it out to that to get into a little bit more of the details, specifically on the housing side of things. In your staff reports, you'll see there's a brief discussion of the recently released Strong Towns Housing Ready Toolkit that Chuck will be also kind of talking a little bit about as well. And in there, there should be some policies that you're fairly familiar with because they're largely the same themes and policy moves that are outlined in SACOG's Mind the Gap initiative, which is our kind of 6 policy moves that a lot of our kind of local and regional housing policy reform has been oriented around as part of Green Means Go, but also just all of the work that you're doing independent of Green Means Go. In fact, many of your respective jurisdictions have already kind of enacted or are kind of working towards these policy reforms. So I'll just mention a couple. ADUs are of course legal in all jurisdictions across the region, but many of our jurisdictions are kind of going further to incentivize them with things like fee reductions and pre-approved plans. That's something that Yuba County has done, as well as several others. Many of your staff, including Sacramento County and others, are working to implement state laws around small lot subdivisions of up to 10 units, legalizing more kind of modest starter homes on lots as small as 1,200 square feet, which Chuck is going to talk a little bit about. But these are kind of critical reforms that are kind of opening up more affordable home ownership opportunities for first-time home buyers. Many of you are pursuing reforms to parking requirements as well. The city of Sacramento just last year eliminated parking requirements citywide. I think was the first in the region to do that, but I think several others are also looking at that, including Marysville. And of course, many of you are really taking huge strides on just sort of a suite of reforms to the approval process for housing. So Folsom is one that I just wanted to shout out. It's done a lot of work on doing objective design standards that really kind of allow for moving these approval processes more to kind of by rights, more kind of staff level approvals, but also being able to kind of maintain quality design of these projects while you do that. So a lot of what Chuck is going to be talking about is quite consistent with where I think we're headed as a region, where a lot of your staff and you have been kind of pushing on housing policy reforms. And I think this will just be a great opportunity to just ask Chuck and talk about kind of implementation of these things and what he's seen in other parts of the country, what's working, what's not working. So That's all I got, but looking forward to a good discussion in a couple weeks.
All right, sounds good. Is there anyone from the public who wishes to comment on this item?
There's no public comment.
All right, any questions from the committee members?
Not a question, but a comment. Thank you for the presentation. I just found it, I continue to kind of reflect on the study mission of sorts to Denver, because it was a real good example of kind of sort of projecting out where they were, say, maybe 25 years ago, where they are now, and how similarly aligned we are in terms of some of the growth patterns, the challenges they're facing, the things that they've accomplished, and where we might learn as we contemplate what the next 25 years look like. Anyhow, just reflecting on that, because I think housing is such a critical part of that going forward, no matter what we do. And it keeps changing, the demands keep changing as well. So, thank you.
Director Villegas, I'll just add on, in your memo and what Dob was speaking to is Chuck's latest book called The Housing Trap. So we have a lunchtime session, should be on your calendar after the board meeting, just for the Land Use Committee and Chuck on that. Chuck will also come to the full board meeting and give a workshop on basically some of his infrastructure, transportation, quick build. So you're gonna get 2 doses of Chuck Maroon on in October.
Through the chair.
Sir,
Unfortunately, I'm gone that day. Is there any chance that the lunchtime meeting will be, I know the board meeting will be recorded and I can watch it later. Any chance
Well,
that the lunchtime thing will also be recorded?
We'll look into that.
Okay.
We'll look into whether we can do that. And then there's Casey, when is the public sort of workshop?
There, and then in the evening, around 5 o'clock, there's going to be an event that we partnered with ULI on to kind of go more into housing and how to really be a welcoming community to small developers. So he's gonna do, again, kind of a talk that's on this housing theme, and we'll have a panel that he'll be a part of to talk about that as well. So we'll have lots of kind of professional organizations or kind of extended the invitation to bring their membership to that.
It doesn't help the fact that you won't be here,
No,
but there's gonna
but-
be multiple opportunities
No.
is what we're saying.
No,
Something else you'll
Making
miss.
you feel even-
You'll also
Yeah.
really be sad that you weren't here for the following.
I'm enjoying the book, though. I think I'm about a quarter to a third of the way through. So, well, on Audible, listening to it.
okay, so moving on, there's one item on receive and file for you to review at your leisure. There's no questions on the receive and file item at this time. We can move on to other matters. Is that okay?
To see you all tomorrow down in Elk Grove for your board retreat, and really looking forward. Hope you all got the information and that you can get there early for the breakfast sandwiches. We've got protein, and a side of protein. And then stay all the way through lunch, where we have Senator Christopher Cavalvin coming for our lunch keynote. Obviously a long-standing veteran of this board and chair of this board, and now somebody who is going to be really important in all of our efforts in the legislature in the year ahead. So looking forward to it.
And Mr. Chair, if I may,
Yes.
just for the purposes of clarifying the record, for item 1, I believe there was no public comment. And then for item 2, the recommendation, the motion was the staff recommendation in the report. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, are there any other members that would like to provide any updates or address any issues that were not on this agenda? No? Going once, going twice, all right, it's gone. All right, well, I'm gonna adjourn the Lunar Committee meeting next. We'll see you guys back here on November 6th, 1:30 for the next meeting.